It's the season of love, and that can only mean one thing. It's time to satiate my unquenchable thirst for romantic drama with Otome games. Yay! I logged onto Steam, browsed through their selection, and found an interesting pick to scratch my romantic itch. So, for only $20, I picked up this nifty game, Royal Alchemist. Get it? Nifty? Like the company? Yeah, you get it. The game starts with the age-old question, are you a boy or a girl? Only this is the age of
gender fluidity.
So I can be whatever combo I want. My pronouns, however, are she and her, so I'm just going to be a girl. And my name will be Gallifreya. The game starts with some dialogue about the state of the world and my place in it. I am an alchemist and mage from the High Council, sent to tutor the 3 royal princes in the art of alchemy. Those 3 princes just lost their father to an assassination attempt, and it is entirely possible that I will die next. Then the difficulty screen pops up. I pick adventure mode because how hard could a dating sim be? It fades in from black and I start in a moving carriage where my companion and I discuss where we're going. Wait a minute. This is... Anyway, the captain tells me the country's a bit off-kilter these days and he has a wife and some children and he's 2 days away from retirement and I'm sure nothing is bad and now everything's on fire. And I'm surrounded by crispy bodies. But there's no time to mourn our shadow figure captain friend, we have assassins to fight. And I don't know how strong I am, but now is definitely the best time to find out. So we duke it out with magic and swords, and then after I have almost killed them all, the last guy bites off his tongue and dies. So now I walk the rest of the way to the castle in tattered and singed clothing, and really it should come as no surprise when the guard at the front door laughs in my face and calls me crazy. Fortunately for us both, I'm saved by the most diplomatic of our 3 love interests, Saren the Crown Prince. He notices my neck marks, tells the guard I'm legit, and in I go, ready to start my new life as a royal tutor. This is where I meet most of the important cast. There's the Lord Regent, my personal servants Raphael and Sala, the hot maid Marigold, the cold butler Harris, and the other 2 princes, Nazir and Aurelius. The Regent holds a party in my honor, and I get my first big choice. Who am I going to obsessively follow until they inevitably fall in love with me? Is it this guy? Is it this? It's Aurelius. His hair is long and he's a chess champion, and I hear that's very fashionable right now. We have a nice talk where I ask a question and he answers by also asking a question. Then we spill some wine, get in a glare fight, and ultimately leave maybe a bit more enemies than friends. This is confirmed when the first thing he does afterwards is challenge me to a duel he thoroughly wins. The next day I'm introduced to the gameplay portion of this dating sim. Royal Alchemist is a skill point game where every week you get to choose 3 classes for you and the princess to attend to build up skills and attributes. And while I'm sure there are plenty of people who like, or maybe love, that addition to an otherwise glorified picture book, I don't, for the simple fact that I have never seen it done well. When I first try any dating sim, I accept whatever consequences my choices have, and I tried really hard to do the same with this game, but this game is not balanced. For Gallifreya, I was completely lost as to what I should focus on. There were no hints in-game as to when certain traits would be useful, and skill checks came out of nowhere to make me fail at simple things, like not interrupting other people's conversations. Some skills ended up being totally worthless, and others were the difference between life and death. And that's annoying enough, wasting a class period on a skill you hardly use, but the worst part is the RNG. That's right, god dang RNG. Every class nets you a bonus to your chosen skill between 2 and 6 at random, meaning you could spend every week leveling up the right skills and still be short because RNGesus came down from heaven just to tell you no. And the game tells you when you failed a check, so I just ended up reloading an old save file and re-rolling that stat I failed with until I got 4 or above on all 3 classes so I can pass. Because really, And I want an answer, Nifty Games. Why would I purposely choose to fail? If you tell me I'm not strong enough to win Aurelius's affection through swordplay, why wouldn't I just reroll my stats until I get plus 15 combat points? Why would I continue a playthrough if I failed the last 3 skill checks and clearly aren't set up to get a good ending? Why wouldn't I just max out whatever stats I'm gaining every week before I move on instead of getting 10 hours in and realizing that I don't have enough combat points to pass a skill check that ends in my death? And heaven forbid somebody saves less than once a week and has to restart the entire route because they got to a point where failure was death and it was impossible to gain the required skill points. Literally, despite my min-maxing, I still failed skill checks and had to reload on the easiest difficulty. I restarted and changed my difficulty because the skill checks were that annoying. And this made everything a nightmare to get through. Sometimes I'd get lucky and get a good roll early. Sometimes I reloaded the file 20 times and just accepted a 3 in one stat because I was too bored to keep rolling. Then I'd fail a check, come back, change what classes I took, and do the whole process all over again. It never stopped being a problem. But there is more than just classes to do every week. There are also missions where you kinda do things, but really it's just a way to earn tiny chibi art and potentially build favor with the servants, nobles, commoners, merchants, and honestly you can skip it all if you just do the request during the story. While you spend your time grinding skills, you'll be asked by various characters to make items to progress the plot or for their own amusement. There aren't too many, and you usually have a decent heads up about when they're due, so it isn't that hard to grind the prince's magic to make each one. Plus, you'll have plenty of money considering all the stat grinding. But back to the romance story thing I was supposed to talk about before I rudely got sidetracked by bad game design. Every week I got 1 or 2 scenes with some of the characters where small things happen, such as looking for a book, meeting a kind-hearted and totally trustworthy noble, or polishing spoons. I got to interact with all the characters pretty evenly, and my preference in prints did alter which scenes I got a bit, so it's an overall smooth intro into the more plot-heavy portions of the story. Aurelius and I spend a good amount of time together sparring and playing chess in the courtyard, and I believe we've developed a healthy respect for one another. One night, I get a knock on my office door from a guard member I don't know. Being smart enough to recognize this as a red flag, I use my words to bide my time and prepare some explosive darts. Once we're out in the courtyard, they attack, and I counter by blowing them up. Turns out they're assassins, and after a big kerfuffle, the guard captain and I are able to subdue one for questioning. But turns out they're mind-controlled, and I get tasked with making a truth serum to get around it. 2 weeks later, I have the serum, and we ask our questions. We don't learn much other than the mastermind knows something about my family secret. The princes argue about what to do with him, and I side with Aurelius, voting to use the prisoner as bait. Strangely, that plan kinda works out, and we figure out that the mastermind has access to the castle and the staff. Anyone can be under his influence. We can trust no one. So that plot takes a backseat for the rest of the game because another nation's counselor is in town for some peace talks, and it's boar hunting time. I meet Gabrielle, and you might think that she's important and potentially a love rival for me, but no. This will be the only conversation I have with her before she dies. I mean the boar hunt. Yes, before the boar hunt. This is the final route choice, where the player gets to decide who they're going for, so of course I elect to spend the hunt with my good buddy Aurelius. He seems thrilled. The hunt starts off great. Turns out Aurelius is really into this kind of thing, so we actually try to win. We manage to corner the beast by a river and slay it, then we wait for the rest of the nobles to follow and see our kill. Much celebration is had over our victory before a poisoned arrow zooms out of the bushes towards Saren. Aurelius reacts in time to block its path, but gets hit, and we rush back to his tent so I can nurse him back to health. He confides to me that this was no ordinary assassination. The arrow is from Gabrielle's country. Someone is trying to ruin the peace talks. But that's enough of that plot. Now I have to go save some children from slavery because politics. No, seriously, I am asked by the Lord Regent to go out and stop a slaver from taking a bunch of children by myself. I guess I am a powerful magical girl, but there's like a lot going on right now, even for me. So I go and save the children, though I'm unable to kill the slaver because it was just me versus him and his entire mercenary squad, so he was able to just walk away while I was busy trying to survive. Luckily, I'm not actually alone, and my best friend Deus Ex Machina, Neri, is here. He just happens to be after the same slaver guy, so he helps me out and we return to the castle. As we return, the Regent comments on how close Aurelius and I are these days. He's glad he's made a friend. Ooh. The next few weeks are uneventful, as I do requests for the pretty merchant lady, the tavern owner, and others. Apparently 2 separate assassination plots aren't enough to warrant some haste. The next bit of adventure comes as Aurelius and I help a merchant and his family carry goods from the capital back to their home. This of course means bandits attack, and I leave Aurelius and his butler to deal with them while I get the family to safety. The daughter is apparently very interested in Aurelius and I's relationship, and when we separate she makes it very clear that I am acting like a besotted maiden around the prince. And that was my goal, sure, but Gallifreya is not handling the news well. I end up ignoring the prince for the rest of the trip. Life continues with requests and work until I go out to celebrate the Feast of the Plough. I enjoy the celebratory atmosphere for a bit and decide to head home early when I catch Aurelius sneaking out of the castle by himself. My curiosity takes over and I follow him into the streets of Old Town. It doesn't take long for me to figure out he's being followed. He leads us all to a dead end, and I make my presence known. He smiles and gets really close, and I can already tell where this is heading. He gives me a choice, and really, it's not a choice at all. Thus, we engage in a very well-described and emotional embrace, and lo and behold, the CG art is actually pretty good. But all good things must come to an end, and so too must this kiss. And as we part, Gallifreya remembers this was all a ruse to throw off his pursuers, and we return back to our pragmatic selves. Aurelius leads us to a brothel where we buy a room for secrecy purposes. Just secrecy purposes. I pay 600 gold for the room, he meets with a spy, I sit on a chair and try not to feel incredibly embarrassed by this entire series of events, and in the morning we quietly leave back towards the castle. Again, life returns to normal, except now Aurelius wants nothing to do with me. He hardly acknowledges my presence when we pass each other, and I can do nothing about it. Just asking if he's been well is apparently too much interaction for him, so instead I just learn to ignore him as he does me. I hear some rumors about Aurelius and Gabrielle, get invited to a tea party, and finally get fed up with being ignored, so I challenge Aurelius to a duel, because the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, and the easiest way into his stomach is to slice it open with an instrument of war. We fight, and I get injured, but I ultimately get what I want, and that was Aurelius' attention. We part with the understanding that I will not be ignored. But now it's time to return to the second of many overarching plots, the plot to destroy the peace talks. I walk down the hallways one afternoon and hear a commotion. I immediately run inside the room to see Counselor Gabrielle. Dead. On the ground, a knife in her chest. Before I can call the guards, I recognize that no one has left this room, so therefore, the killer is still inside. I turn just in time to see Gabrielle's handmaiden and stop her from murdering me too. A kerfuffle is had, and in the end she impales herself on a knife in my hand as the guards arrive on the scene. I'm taken into custody as the main suspect. The Lord Regent and Aurelius visit me in my cell to discuss what happened. They agree to look for clues as to the real mastermind behind this attack, but if they aren't found, I'm most likely dead. Due to my constant gift-making, though, lots of people are willing to help in the investigation, which means it's actually very easy, as I do nothing but wait in my cell while everyone else does the hard work. Next thing I know, it's the day of the trial. They find evidence that the too-kind-to-be-true noble lady was the culprit, along with a whole sad backstory about abandonment and fathers, and none of that matters because we have to go back to the child slaves plot. Nazir leaves. Neri Ex Machina comes back with a silver-haired child. I have to help this child because family secrets. Aurelius and I are kinda dating now. Neri and I snoop in the king's room and find a journal only legible to members of my family. Prince Saren's coronation is coming up. Sala disappears. Neri goes out to search for secrets. I have to entertain this child because I really don't know why he's here, actually. Neri's horse comes back empty. I ride out to find Neri. Harris and I get attacked by Raphael. We find the king alive and not assassinated. We all return to the castle. The castle's been taken over by the mind controller guy we haven't talked about for several months now. We break in. Harris betrays us all and is revealed to be the mind controller mastermind. The king and Harris have a back and forth about a bunch of stuff in the past that has nothing to do with any of us. Neri Ex Machina uses the king's unlimited power to stop all the magic in the castle, thus removing the magical brainwashing, and Saren gets crowned with no more problems. Aurelius and I separate for a couple years because we have jobs and stuff before finally getting together with a planned marriage after we settle a war with the country of slavers. The end. But Gale, that was an awful lot of stuff that just happened. And you're right, viewer. That is a lot of stuff that just happened. And it all happened in the last 10 weeks of a 60-week game. It was all rush plot and nothing else for the last hour and a half of my 10-hour playthrough. It was a slog. And I kinda didn't like this game. I gave it 2 more shots, playing both Nazir and Saren's roots, but neither made up for some personally glaring faults. In fact, both were kind of even worse. First is the skill point system, but I've talked about that already. Second is the story. On the one hand, it's pretty generic, but that's not the worst thing a story could be. On the other hand, it's full of filler, and the ending sucks. If I could get rid of the pointless dialogue and RNG skill points, I could cut my playtime of 10 hours in half. And I sit through that extra time for the climax to be a pointless twist. The king being alive should be fun and exciting, but he's an OP wizard who's me, but better and can do whatever he wants. So instead of actively participating in the climax, I just wait for him to save us all. In fact, the ending has very little to do with me. My only contribution is to save the bad guy from execution, which the epilogue then tells me doesn't do crap because he just sits in silence anyway. If I spent 10 hours playing your game, I would at least like to feel like my actions mattered at all by the end of it. And you might think that making the main character useless or forcing me to min-max is the worst thing this game does, but in my eyes there is one more barb that stings far worse. The third and biggest fault of this game is the romance. When I spend $20 on a game presented to me as an adventure where I can fall for multiple handsome men, I expect there to be a somewhat major focus on that romance part. I certainly didn't pay $20 for a generic and ultimately disappointing game where I get an average 1.5 kisses per route. Aurelius just happens to be the most romantic of the 3 routes, but I gutted a lot of the filler in my summary for the sake of entertainment. So for every scene where we had a romantic encounter, there were 10 or more scenes about mundane life stuff. Saren's route is just, oh he's cute, for 95% of the runtime, and then you hold hands once, and then in the last day, you skip to sex. Yeah, that's the actual progress of that relationship. Nazir has a confession scene, but your character is so unconcerned with romance by that point that it takes 2 more conversations about that confession before you're finally like, yeah, I guess I like you too. And then first kiss, and then I don't remember if you get another because it was so boring I forgot even though I played this route 2 days before writing the script. Look, maybe 1 kiss is all some girls want, and I'm being overly critical and unfair to a game that honestly does seem to have a lot of passion and love put into it. But I'm a higher level of Otome being. I require drama, longing, unrequited moping that turns into passion and action. I want love rivals. I want political intrigue that lead to conflict between feelings and responsibilities, and I want an interesting plot about the romance instead of the pointless slave child arc of the game or the reintroduction of a king who solves everything with his OP powers. So I'm disappointed. I wanted top-tier romance with top-tier husbands that would reinvigorate my heart with the passion of 1,000 suns. I wanted to be whisked away to a fantasy world and be swept off my feet by the long-haired man of my dreams. But instead, I sat through increasingly boring dialogue and the same class screen for hours as I tried to just get through to any romantic payoff. So this Valentine's Day, I guess I'll just have to live with this disappointment being my romance adventure. Or I could try another. And another. And another. In fact, perhaps I try enough romance adventures to fill an entire month. A month dedicated to love-based games and my love for them. Hello everybody and welcome to Otome month. I'm doing love-based games twice a week to find the ultimate romance. Hot guys, cute girls, new worlds, hotter dragons. I'm trying it all to celebrate everything fun and exciting about this genre. So look forward to a month of romantic festivities. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next heart-skipping adventure. Bye-bye!